Good afternoon. Welcome to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Friday, June the 27th, 2014. I want to talk about the NBA draft and the New York Knicks in relation to Carmelo Anthony. But I want to first start off with the NBA draft. There were a lot of teams that I thought helped themselves last night. I'm going to mention some of the teams. I thought Cleveland, Milwaukee, depending how this whole thing works out, maybe Philly, Chicago, Boston, LA, Miami, and San Antonio, and the Knicks. But what I want to talk about here, there were some teams that made some interesting moves. And there were some teams that made some flat-out head-scratching, or as I would call it, dumb moves. And then we wonder why they're constantly in the lottery, which the lottery is like the first 14 picks in the draft, okay, in the top 14. There's reasons why, folks, teams are constantly in the lottery. There are reasons why teams are constantly picking high. Because generally, they don't know what the hell they're doing. I'll give you an example. There are teams that look like they have a plan. Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, okay, Mitch Kupchak, Danny Ainge, R.C. Buford, okay? These guys look like they got a plan as to how to put together a team. Then there's some guys, I'm sitting here wondering. Now, I know that Flip Saunders is he's basically running the operation there in Minnesota. But here's what really irked me in the draft yesterday. A guy by the name of Shabazz Napier, a guard out of UConn, okay? And if you know the history of players out of UConn, they generally are very productive in the pros, okay? You find very few busts who came out of UConn, who ended up being a bust. You don't find too many busts out of UConn. They usually put together good players. That being said, Shabazz Napier, a point guard for the national champion, UConn Huskies. This guy is a two-time national champion. They won the national championship when he was a freshman, and he won the national championship as a senior. Now, why is this important? Because in the most important position in basketball, which is now the point guard position, because let's be honest, you can't go anywhere without a point guard, and I'm going to show you some examples, one in particular, about a team who really exponentially improved themselves in a span of 48 to 72 hours, just by getting rid of a point guard. But point guards is the quarterback of the NBA, okay? You can't win without a good point guard. Now, Minnesota has a point guard in Ricky Rubio, okay? He's a flashy European point guard who hasn't quite come into his own fully yet, but he's got a lot of promise. He looks good. But what did Minnesota do? Some teams actually passed on him for other point guards that are really questionable moves. I'll give you an example, okay? Instead of drafting Shabazz Napier, here's some teams that passed on him. The Orlando Magic. Now, the Philadelphia Sixers, who was drafting 10th, drafted this guy by the name of Elfrid Payton, a point guard out of Louisiana Lafayette, which had me scratching my head at the time because I'm like, well, you got Michael Carter-Williams, who did a great job and is a rookie. So why would you draft another point guard? But what I didn't know was that that player was to be moved to Orlando. Now, if Orlando needed a point guard, then Shabazz Napier would have been a better fit than Elfrid Payton. Elfrid Payton may turn out to be the better player in the long run, but you're relying on potential. See, At least Shabazz Napier is a senior guard. You know what you're going to get from Shabazz Napier. Somebody who's going to take care of the basketball, somebody who can make. This guy's got big game ability. Now, I know LeBron James said after the national championship game he's the best point guard in the draft, and that's debatable. Okay, if he's the best point guard in the draft. And usually I don't like taking recommendations by players because players don't really know. But this is one time when LeBron got it right. Shabazz Napier is one of the top 2 guards in the draft. There's just no denying it. And here you got teams like Orlando, a team that perennially struggled since Dwight Howard left the building. Remember, this is the same team who couldn't even put the right talent around Dwight Howard. So why am I surprised? Why should I be surprised? Orlando is constantly drafting in the upper part of the draft. It's like they can't seem to get this right. And so you went and traded or drafted Elfrid Payton when you had Shabazz Napier sitting there? What are you guys doing? And then the team, even more egregious than Orlando, was the Minnesota Timberwolves. You got Ricky Rubio there. So I'm sitting here questioning, why are you drafting another point guard? But if you were going to draft another point guard, why would you go for a guy named Zach LaVine, who was drafted 13th overall, who came out of UCLA? This guy doesn't even want to be in Minnesota. And how do I know this now? You know, the media can try to spin it any kind of way they want. He's taking some hits today, and rightfully so. Because forget about the fact he put his head down when he got drafted. I got no problem with that. Because a guy can be crying, so that's one reason why he might put his head down. It can be any number of reasons, to hide a little, excitement. But when he stood up, he said, F me. That doesn't sound like a guy who was thrilled about where he was going. So then when the little reporting was going around, now it turns out he couldn't get along with his coach. Steve Alford, I think is the coach there at UCLA. They butted heads. Folks, he sounds like a head case. Why would you draft a head case when you got Shabazz Napier sitting there? And we wonder why this team is constantly in the lottery. No wonder Kevin Love wants out of Minnesota. It's bad when your star players want out. You can't say, well, it's not fair because we're in a small market. Well, let me show you some teams that are in the small market. Okay? San Antonio. Well, wow. San Antonio's a small market, but San Antonio's been competitive for over 15 years. So you can't use them. OKC, since they left Seattle, they have been competitive. I think they were just recently in the NBA Finals a couple of years ago. So you can't, and guess what? They're one of the teams that's projected to possibly get to the finals again next year. So therefore, you can't say OKC. Matter of fact, they're the smallest market in the NBA from what is being reported. So you can't blame small market. So what is really the problem here? You know what the problem is? You got GMs who don't know what they're doing, who don't know how to put together a team. This is why nobody wants to come to you. This is why everybody wants to avoid you like the plague. You don't know what you're doing. That was a dumb move. Now, it might turn out that this player, Zach LaVine, may turn out to end up being a big-time player. But he's already gotten off to a bad start in my book. Because I don't care if that's not exactly the place you want to go. You should be grateful that that team thought enough of you to draft you. Okay? If you don't want to go there, then here's what I would tell you to do. Don't enter the draft or just say you want to be a free agent. So this way you can choose the team you want to go to. But when you decide you want to enter the NBA or the NFL or the Major League Baseball draft or the NHL draft, God knows who's going to draft you. So if there are teams you don't want to go to, it's best you don't enter the draft. It's best you don't enter the draft if there are teams you don't want to go to. Because the team you don't want to go to is most likely going to be the team that ends up picking you. Okay? And I can tell you right now, Jabari Parker, from what the word was, did not want to go to Cleveland. Now, if Andrew Wiggins was not in this year's draft, and let's say you got Joel Embiid with his foot problems, guess who Cleveland would have drafted? Jabari Parker. There would have been no doubt in my mind about it if Andrew Wiggins wasn't in this draft. Because why? It was clear. Jabari Parker made it clear. He wanted to go to Milwaukee, which was drafting second. Okay? Then there was another team that, now, it's not, to me, it sounds like they're about to lose my man, Kyle Lowry, which if you watch a previous segment that I had, I said that I would, if I'm Miami, I would go with Kyle Lowry. It sounds like he's going to Miami. Well, Toronto maybe I think should have known this. Don't you think you could have used Shabazz Napier? I don't know, just a thought. But here's what Toronto chose to do. They chose to draft this guy by the name of Bruno Caboclo, or Caboclo out of Brazil. Doesn't really matter. And Franz Fraschilla, who's supposed to be the international guru. Okay, the international guru was to know all the international players say, wow, this was a surprise. He's 2 years away from being 2 years away. Whoa, he's 2 years away from being 2 years away. That means he's 4 years away. Why would you spend the number 20th overall pick on a guy who's really 4 years away? That is a dumb move. That's a move you go to get in the second round. You don't spend the first round pick. So what it says to me was that Toronto wanted to keep him overseas because Toronto wanted to keep the cap space. That's the only reason you're making this move, folks. It's for cap space purposes. Well, here's an idea, Toronto. Why don't you try this before you make this dumb move? Why don't you trade that pick to, say, New York, or dare I say Brooklyn, or other teams that could use a first-round pick, and move it to the second round? I would have traded that number 20th pick and got the Knicks 2 picks in the second round. That's what I would have done if I wanted to save for cap space. So to me, I have no understanding why Toronto did what they did. I'm sorry. These are moves where it makes me scratch my head. It's like, do these franchises know what they're doing? This is what, now I understand why nobody wants to play for you guys. Because look, the one thing players want more than, as much as they want money, and make no mistake about it, players want their money. But there's something else they also want, a hope. They want to see a path to winning. Because at the end of the day, players do want to win. It's too long of a season, 86 games, to be losing, to have no hope of winning. That's rough. So players want to know that you got a plan and a program. And this is why I say, and which really angers me, is this pretty much sealed LeBron James in Miami, in my opinion. Because he loved the move that Miami was able to get. I mean, they got Shabazz Napier. But forget about sealing LeBron in Miami. What this did is this made Miami a better team today than they were a few weeks ago in the finals. Because Shabazz Napier is a clear upgrade over Mario Chalmers and Norris Cole, in my opinion. Now, he's a hard worker. He's got moxie. He's got moxie. And I like my point guard with a little moxie, some toughness to him, rough around the edges. Okay? He's not going to take crap from anybody. So Miami just gotten better. You don't help. I'm agreeing with Bill Simmons. Why is people helping out Miami? I don't understand that. But I'm going to tell you the team that I really like what they did. And I waited until today to do my podcast or my recording because I wanted to see the completion of the move that Phil Jackson made here. Okay, the draft took place on Thursday, but on Wednesday, okay, the Knicks completed a trade that was very, very interesting. They traded a bad contract and a bad player, or should I say a backup player, bad backup, or a bad starting player, should I call him? Okay? The bad contract, okay, was, oh my God, I can't believe, I forgot his name now. Chandler. Oh my God, I just quickly forgot his name. Chandler. Chandler is the bad contract. Okay? And, I mean, because he's getting paid what, like about 15, 16 million to basically defend and rebound. The problem is that dropped off the last couple of years. That's a lot of money to be paying a guy whose production has dropped off, and he doesn't really, unless he's right around the basket doing the alley-oops, he really can't put the ball in the hoop. But more importantly, they got Raymond Felton out of town. Okay? They got Raymond Felton out of town. That had to get him out of town. Because to me, he killed the Knicks last year as far as I'm concerned. Because think about this. 2 seasons ago, they had 54 victories. Who was running their point? Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd, an over-the-hill player, but still a Hall of Fame player who understands how to play the position. Raymond Felton was the backup, so there was no pressure on Raymond Felton. That's why Raymond Felton looked good. But last season, when Kidd retired, and they basically gave the raise to Raymond Felton, you saw the results, a 37-win team. I'm sorry, he's just not a starting point guard. On top of that, he didn't even have enough professional pride to come in shape. He looked like a doughboy. And you cannot have that body as a point guard because you need all the quickness and speed and physicality you can get. And so let's just call it what it was. He was unprofessional. And when you got somebody unprofessional running your organization, this is what you get. And you wonder why Carmelo was frustrated. This is why. Come on. Look who you have running your position. So look what Phil Jackson did. So he traded Chandler and Felton, and he brought back Dallenberg. He brought back Samuel Dallenberg. He brought back Jose Calderon, a high percentage three-point shooting point guard, a guy who can shoot the rock and run the point. Not great, but solid. Okay? Shane Larkin, who was a rookie last season. Okay? Another point guard. Wayne Ellington, okay, who knows how that's going to turn out. But more importantly, he got 2 second-round picks. Because remember, in this draft, the Knicks didn't have any picks. But he happened to finagle Dallas to give him the 2 second-round picks. And they used one of those picks to get DeAnthony Cleveland. Okay? No, Cleanthony, I'm sorry, not DeAnthony. Cleanthony Cleveland. So, this guy is going to turn into something, it seems like. He's a high-energy guy, okay? Who knows if he's going to be a star? Who knows? But here's what Phil Jackson basically did in a span of 48 hours. He basically made the Knicks relevant again. Because everybody was bemoaning, oh, Anthony's got to trust Phil Jackson. Oh, you know, we don't know what kind of GM Phil Jackson's going to make. Getting Felton out of town without blowing up the salary cap in the future tells me this guy knows what he's doing. He got Felton out of town. He knows what he's doing. Okay? He done made the Knicks interesting. The Knicks now should be competing in the upper half of the Eastern Conference next year. I would be shocked if they're not. This team is going to be talented. They got shooters galore all over the place now with some of the moves that he just made. And I suspect Phil is not done wheeling and dealing, by the way, which means he's not making the mistake that a lot of other GMs made. Good GMs like Donnie Walsh made. Donnie Walsh waited, allowed the Knicks to be bad, to get all the cap room, to go chase LeBron James for them basically to strike out. And you had nobody to spend the money on. And I agree with Ernie Grunfeld, an ex-GM of the Knicks, who's doing a great job there in Washington, by the way. They got an exciting team. Watch out for Washington next year, folks. And also watch out for Charlotte. Those are going to be some two very interesting teams next year. But Ernie Grunfeld said the worst thing in the NBA is to have cap room and nobody to spend it on. Wow, that's bad. Well, that's what the Knicks faced in 2010. And nothing against Donnie Walsh, but you didn't have a realistic plan. And this was your problem. Your plan, see, in the NBA, folks, and there's a little secret in the NBA you got to know. You got to be either really, really good or really, really bad. There is no in between in the NBA. The worst thing you could be is in between in the NBA. You got to be really, really good or really, really bad. Because at least if you're really, really bad, you can get the lottery pick, and if you know what you're doing, you can get better in a couple of years. First of all, here's my view. If you're more than 2 to 3 years in a row in the lottery and you're not competitive, this is a GM problem. He doesn't know what he's doing. Because it doesn't take much, folks, to get a competitive team if you know what you're doing. San Antonio built a competitive team. You just got to know what you're doing. Get the right players. That means you got to have an advanced scouting system. Your scouts got to be advanced. They got to be top notch. And you got to get a GM who knows what the hell he's doing, who knows talent, and knows how to put it together to make a good team. A team that can consistently compete. Okay? This is why I'm saying the Bulls is wasting their time, in my opinion, going after Carmelo Anthony. Because now you're going to have 3 guys tying all your money up in the cap. That's not going to work. It is not. It hardly worked in Miami. Everybody talking about Miami was successful, Miami this, but Miami came within a few plays of not even getting some of the titles they got. People forget that. So they got a little lucky. Folks, it's hard to have a top quality team if 3 guys is eating up all the money. It's better to have 1 or 2 guys eating the money and then you spending the money out to build a deeper team. That's the way to go. I'd rather have quality and quantity than just 2 or 3 guys. Give me quality and quantity. I need a deep bench. This is how San Antonio built their team. And if you look at the Knicks are slowly building their team like San Antonio. Though Phil Jackson at times will deride, make a little fun of San Antonio, but notice he's following the same blueprint. Getting a whole bunch of athletes, more guys who can pass and shoot. And in the triangle, folks, that's very important. You got to have guys who can pass and shoot. Okay? Pass and shoot. If you cannot do that, you cannot play in the triangle or play for Phil Jackson. You just cannot. You got to be able to, because why? It's all about floor spacing. Notice that LeBron James gave San Antonio the biggest compliment that you can give the opponent. When they asked him, why were they so effective? He says, because every player on the floor, no matter who they put on the floor, is live. Which means this is the player you got to guard. You can't come off that play to help out on somebody else. Because why? This guy will knock down shots and he will hurt you. Or he will be able to penetrate, which will force more help, and then he'll pass the ball out, which will give them even easier shots. So that means everybody on the floor has to be defended. Now, a lot of teams cannot say that. This is why I'm like Houston and Chicago. Did you guys bother watching the finals? Sometimes less is more. Did you guys bother watching the final and saw just how much Miami really couldn't do anything against the Spurs? Do you think it was just because of Wade's old age? If you think it was just because of Wade's old age, you really don't understand how this works. Wade could have been playing well and they would have still lost. They might have not gotten beat as bad, but they would have still lost. San Antonio was clearly a better team. They ran Miami off the floor. That finals was the least competitive finals I have seen in a long, long time. And then now I'm hearing some of the media say, well, you can't win without 2 to 3 superstars today. That's not true. You just need one. You just need one. Dallas showed you that in 2011. There was only one superstar. Jason Kidd was a backup who was over the hill, point guard. He's over the hill at that point. He wasn't a superstar, even though he was, how can I say this? Well, he got a superstar name, but he was no longer the player he once was. That's why they used a lot of J.J. Barrera, okay? J.J. Barrera played a lot in that series because why? Couldn't really keep up. You can't play Kidd with so many minutes. So they only had really one superstar, and that was Dirk Nowitzki. Matter of fact, Nowitzki really should have had 2 titles. In 2006, they blew it more than, in my opinion, more than more than Miami wanted. But that's another story for another day. But the reality is you just need one superstar. You don't need 2 or 3. Get one superstar and a whole bunch of very, very good role players around them. And guess what? You can win with that. You got Carmelo Anthony. You can win with that. Which now brings me to an error I think a lot of people, Knicks fans included, are making. And it has to do with, well, if Carmelo wants max money, let him walk. Because we could go after Kevin Durant in 2 years. I don't know what is the New York media's love affection with thinking you can just get a starter because this is New York. Let me explain something to you folks. Kevin Durant is getting everything he wants there in OKC. If you don't believe that, then you ain't paying attention. Okay? He's got Westbrook, Jackson, Lamb, Adams. He's got a very talented team. More importantly, Serge Ibaka. Got a very talented team. Why on earth would he leave that team? They just need a head coach, in my opinion. Nothing against Scotty Brooks. He's a decent head coach. He's not a championship caliber head coach, in my opinion. That being said, why on earth would he leave that situation in a couple of years to come to a Knicks team, especially one if they don't even have Carmelo Anthony? Why on earth would he leave that to come to the Knicks? I would like somebody to please explain that to me. Please explain that. Why on earth would he leave OKC to come to the melting pot of New York? Remember that one newspaper columnist who had the audacity to criticize Kevin Durant there in OKC? What happened the next day? The paper, the town, and everybody made him apologize. Kevin Durant didn't even have to say a word. Kevin Durant has that kind of power. He comes to New York, he misses a shot. The next thing you know, you want to run him out of town. That's New York for you. Why on earth would he leave OKC to come to that? Because that columnist would have been in New York. The next writer who wants to have even a much better take on it would have criticized Durant even further. In other words, that columnist wouldn't have paid the price for criticizing Durant if he was here in New York. But because he did that in OKC, he's paying the price. You don't criticize Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant got that kind of power. Wow. Why would he leave that to come to the Knicks? Or any team for that matter, but particularly the Knicks, because that's the rumor that everybody wants to float out there. Folks, Kevin Durant, that's a pipe dream. Not only that, keep in mind, Phil Jackson signed a 5-year deal, right, for $12 million each. Yeah. Kevin Durant won't be a free agent for 2 seasons. After the 2016 to 2017 season, if I remember. Okay, 2016, 2017. After the 2016, 2017 season. Okay, that's when he becomes a free agent. You know the problem with that? If you don't have Carmelo Anthony, you know what the problem is with that now? By the time you can get, let's even assume Durant decides he wants to come to New York. Assuming Phil Jackson doesn't sign another deal, because you don't even know if he's going to re-sign with the Knicks. Because I really doubt Dolly's going to keep paying him $12 million after this 5 years is up. Especially if Anthony walks. Okay? But let's say you go and get Durant. Somehow you were able to convince Durant to leave OKC for New York. Let's just assume, let's just go on that premise for a second, though you can't. But let's just assume, let's go on that premise for 1 second. You know the problem with that? Now that means you got to build the team around what? Kevin Durant. What's the problem with that? Well, that's year 3, if my math serves me correct, in the Phil Jackson era. That would be year 3. That leaves him 2 more years to win, for this team to get to a championship, if not win it. Or else we will be considering Phil Jackson's tenure a failure. Let's be honest. See, to replace one superstar with another, as my aunt always told me, a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush. Now, I always thought that was a crazy saying, but there's some validity to that. You got a superstar. Why would you wait 2 years? Why would you get rid of your superstar to wait 2 years to go get another superstar? What? That makes no sense, folks. First of all, if I'm James Dolan, I'm pissed. Because would you pay somebody $12 million a year if that's their plan? This is why when I keep hearing people say, does Phil Jackson really want Carmelo here? That sounds stupid to even ask that question. Do you think Phil Jackson is in New York if Carmelo wasn't here? If the Knicks didn't have that cap space after next season? Do you really think Phil Jackson would have been in New York? Do you think Jim Dolan would be paying him $12 million a year to be in New York if that was the case? Folks, it makes no sense for Phil Jackson to let Carmelo Anthony walk. First of all, do you realize how difficult it is to build a championship team, or to have a championship team in 5 years? Now, you can have a competitive team in 5 years, yes. But to have a championship team in 5 years, you're already up against it, which means you can't waste a year. This is why Phil is making the moves he's making now. It's not so much about Carmelo Anthony as it is making certain he can build a competitive team that can compete for a championship within a year or two. Because Phil knows he cannot waste a year in hopes, because that's what this is, folks. Going after Kevin Durant is a hope. That's not a plan. Championships. This is what Phil has a lot of. Championships. Phil doesn't doesn't rely on hope. He delivers. This is why he's an 11-time champion. He delivers. And he knows you can't rely on that plan. Get rid of Carmelo, go for, as flawed as Carmelo may be, get rid of Carmelo and go for Kevin Durant. You can't sell that. That's not a plan. That's the same idiotic plan the Knicks had back in the 2009-2010 season. Get underneath the cap, go for LeBron. What happens if you don't get LeBron? I know. Let's go get, to try to convince LeBron to come here, let's go get a broken down, let's get rid of David Lee, a 2010 scorer, for a broken down 28 score. Let me see. Amari Stoudemire. And overpay for him. That's why the Knicks is in the situation there is now, because you relied on a flawed plan. It was flawed to sit there and wait on LeBron. Forget about the fact that he was already making plans with Dwayne Wade and them boys. Put that to a side. Here, think about it. The teams that were chasing LeBron in 2010 was not only the Knicks and Miami. You had Cleveland, but more importantly, you had Chicago. Now, what does Chicago already have? Derrick Rose. They already have Derrick Rose. Okay? So you got at least something to start with. The Knicks had nobody. And don't sit up here and tell me, well, we got Amari Stoudemire, and that should have convinced. Come on, everyone knew Amari Stoudemire's knees were shot. Come on. This is what makes people say the Knicks. This is why people were laughing at the Knicks. The Knicks became a laughing stock because these are dumb moves. And it's a dumb move to sit there and let go Carmelo Anthony and tell me you're going to go for Kevin Durant. That's a dumb move. Yeah, you might land Kevin Durant, but it's a small might. You can't rely on that. And what happens if Kevin Durant turns you down? Then where do you go? What, you going to tell me about what, LaMarcus Aldridge? Let's see, LaMarcus Aldridge. He's not better than Carmelo Anthony, so that's actually a downgrade. And you would have to pay him max money to boot. Wow. Oh, yeah, that's smarter than Knicks. Come on. What was LaMarcus Aldridge going to give you? Come on. He's no Carmelo Anthony. Nice player. Very nice player. He's no Carmelo Anthony. Well, Kevin Love is going to be traded and re-signed with whatever team he's traded to, folks. Forget about Kevin Love. Rajon Rondo, forget about Rajon Rondo. Why do you think Boston did what they did last night? When they drafted that smart guy out of Oklahoma State. Okay? When they drafted him, that's the ultimately package, most likely Rondo out of town. So Rondo's going to most likely be traded and signed somewhere else because why? They're not going to let him walk for nothing, and especially walk to one of their rivals, the Knicks. Just not going to happen, folks. And not only that, it's being reported that Portland is offering LaMarcus Aldridge the max. So there's a good chance he's not even going to leave Portland. So then where does that leave you if you don't end up with Kevin Durant? Oh, my God. I mean, you know what that leads to, Knicks? The same situation that happened in 2010. Have all that cap space and money, with the money, and have nobody to ultimately spend it on. This is why you can't get rid of Carmelo, folks. It's like, do this media and the fans here actually think? Why do you think Phil Jackson ultimately came out and said, listen, if Melo wants max money, Melo's going to get max money. All we're asking him to do is honor his word. That's all Phil is saying. Get past all that Jedi mind trick Phil is saying, talking. Or break it down. What Phil is saying is, look, we'll give him max if that's what he wants. But we're just asking him to honor his word. That's all Phil Jackson is really saying, folks. Everybody wants to parse every term and this, that, and the other. Okay? Stop. The reality is the Knicks need Carmelo as much as Carmelo needs the Knicks. They need one another. Okay? That's the reality. This is why Phil cannot let Carmelo Anthony walk. Period. Now, if Carmelo says, I don't want to stay, that's different. That's different. If Carmelo Anthony says, I don't want to stay. But we just don't see that happening. That's not a plan. Okay? And if that happens, then what you do, you're going to end up just being the Denver Nuggets of the West. Of the East. A very good team, but you ain't not going to really go nowhere. Because you don't want, if you let go of Carmelo Anthony, folks, you're going to be the Denver Nuggets of the East. A very good team, because that's what you will be. But you're not going to win. You're not going to win. You're not going nowhere. That's why Denver is going to hopelessly be a first-round exit team. Because they don't have the one superstar who can say, okay, no. Give me the ball and let me put the team on the back. They don't have that. That's the one thing they're missing. They got talent. They just don't have that one superstar and putting it all together. But they got talent. And they're in a loaded conference. If they were in the East, they'd be better off. But they were in the West, and that hurts them. Okay? But Denver's a good team, folks. But then that's what the Knicks will be. If they don't have Carmelo Anthony, they just will not beat the better teams. That's just the reality. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Have a good weekend.